Industrial Revolution had a profound impact on human society. It basically created the world as we know it today. And you may realize it or not, but processes that are happening right now in the software industry look very similar. To understand that, let's look at the analogy. During medieval times and Renaissance era, manufacturing looked more like an art. Masters spent their entire life learning all intricacies of their work. They were responsible for the entire processes, making every part and putting all the pieces together. They constantly reinvented new things and new ways of doing their work. Before Napoleonic Wars, regular manufacturer could produce not more than 100 muskets a month. But that was not enough to give muskets to large armies. So smart people come up with two interesting inventions. They were replaceable parts and assembly lines, and then changed the way how things were done. All parts were created based on clear, well-defined standards by different workers, and then people out of the street after a short training were able to put together muskets on an assembly line. In a fairly short time, that improved production by order of magnitude with similar decrease in cost. And just few years ago, software development looked more like a medieval manufacturing. It's an art. Developers, they write their code and put it together, and this whole process was very hard and very expensive. But with introduction of microservices and DevOps, things are changing. Microservices are those replaceable parts. They can have independent life cycle that can be developed, tested, released, and deployed independently from one another. And then assembly lines is your DevOps processes, when you can take microservices and quickly assemble a system from them. And then when you need to introduce a new feature, you just change in few microservices, testing only that part of the system and deploy that into production. So it's much faster and much easier than it was before. And we can see that you can improve production up to 6 times and cost up to 12 times if you do things right. You may ask where those numbers are coming from. I have to admit there is no exact science there. Those numbers came out of experience. But they are not entirely out of the blue. Let's look at them. Let's look at possible productivity improvements. One way to improve your productivity is just simply write less code. And you can do it by using more productive technologies that give you features that you need, so you don't have to implement it yourself. And you can introduce those features only one microservice at a time without the need to rework the entire product. Then, if you take any system, roughly 20 to 30% of functionality is not that unique. Let's say user accounts, login and metrics, role-based security, session management, handling blobs and files. So to implement all that functionality, you can take microservices off the shelf and make them part of your system rather than implementing it yourself. Then, if you implement in several products, there is a high chance that a lot of functionality will be similar or the same across all of them. Microservices make it very easy to share that functionality. It doesn't have to be implemented in the same language or even use the same set of libraries. You can do it any way you like and then share it across all your products. The second way to improve productivity is to work faster. With microservices, developers can focus only one microservice at a time, and they don't even need to understand how the entire system works. There is a high repeatability across microservices. So if you implement a well-defined set of templates and teach developers best practices and patterns, they will repeat it multiple times and they will master. So they will do their work with higher quality in a very short time. So it's safely to say that you can improve your productivity by a factor of 2. And the third way is to have more optimal processes. With large monolithic system, when you introduce a new developer, he usually spends several days or even weeks learning how to implement the code in this new project. With microservices, you can take average developer out of the street in a few days, show them your patterns and techniques, and he will become productive implementing microservices. He doesn't need to know about the rest of the system. Then, when you release your microservice into production, you can capture defects much sooner and spend less time fixing them. And then with incremental delivery, you releasing only a small set of functionality, so you don't have to retest and re-release the entire system. That gives you a good productivity improvement, saving up to 50% of your time on regular waste activities. So if you combine all those factors, you can see that if you implement all those techniques, you can improve your productivity by a factor of 6. Now let's look at the possible cost reduction. In software development, by far the biggest chunk of your cost is salaries. So if you can implement functionality 6 times faster, as we showed it in the productivity improvement, you need to pay 6 times less salary to your developers and testers. The second part comes from lower rates. With monolithic system, it was really hard to hire developers from offshore. You need to spend a lot of time training them, and they basically become part of your team. With microservices, you can safely and easily add new developers offshore, give them a very short training, assign them one microservice to work on, and after a while you can let them go. So you need to maintain only a small internal team for technical continuity. And as we know, salaries of offshore developers could be 3, sometimes 4 times lower than in US. So even considering you have to have a small internal team, your rate reduction will be at least times of 2. By combining those two factors, you can reduce your cost by 12. It happened that during my long career in software development, I participated in development of several IoT systems that were very similar in terms of size and functionality, and I can use them as for comparison. Around 2014-2015, I worked for a large corporation, and I participated in development of equipment monitoring and reliability system. That product took us around 2 years in development. The work was done by 10 people, and the cost was over $2 million, which was not that bad at the time. And just a few years later, in 2017, when I left corporate, I started my own startup. And I was not restricted by corporate policies and processes, so I went the full way into industrial development methods and practices. I implemented a production tracking and safety system, which was very similar in functionality and very similar in size to the product that I just mentioned. The development was done by 5 people, and the first release was completed in just 7 months. The overall cost was below $200,000. As we can see, there was a big improvement in terms of productivity, around 7 times, and cost 11 times. So those numbers are very similar to the numbers I just presented to you. Of course, not every organization can implement all the best practices in a short time. It may take you a few years to get there. But even if you implement a few best practices, you can find that in 1 or 2 years you can reach 3, sometimes 4 times improvement comparing to the state where you were before moving to industrial development. So if you want to learn more about industrial software development, microservices, and DevOps, visit our website at www.intinco.com and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.